Good day everyone, welcome to the course on biological data analysis and visualization with R. We have now seen few data sets, right, and different kinds of data sets. One of the data sets is the noise data set, and then we have also seen a growth curve data set, okay, and we have illustrated how to generate different types of plots with those data sets. Of course, this is not exhaustive, right, there are many other types of plots that you can do, but these are the most widely used ones for in biological data analysis, and we use them very regularly. And as you can see, as we have probably gained some idea that these plots can be customized in R, right, to minute details. We can change each parameter to our liking, and we can generate really beautiful plots. Okay, so we will continue that in this class, and now we will actually introduce two packages. So, these are R packages that are widely used also for plotting, especially the ggplot2 package. We also use the vioplot package, which I also mentioned very briefly in the last class. So, what we will do is we will actually use this package in this class, and we will generate a plot and see how it looks like. And then we will continue with the ggplot2 package. We will introduce ggplot2 package in this class, and we will also talk about some of the functions and related packages in the next class, where we will also use some visualization. We will generate some visualization. Okay, so just to remind you what we have discussed so far in the last class, we actually took the noise data set, which we have been using for many types of analysis for visualization, and we did the box plot, right. We split the data based on value of one parameter. In our case, it was the value of data box, but we can split data based on any parameters, and we can also set filtering conditions, like the value of a parameter above certain value or below certain value. So, we can generate that kind of data frames. We can split data frames and then use those for plotting the data, okay. And we did this with box plot in the last class, and we got very nice distributions of these data sets, right. And then on box plot, we also wanted to see the distribution of the data points, right. So, for that we use the strip chart function. So, what I will do first is I will show you that and remind you about the data and the box plot, and then we will go into the vioplot. Okay. So, that is the agenda for this class. So, we will first start with the vioplot command and vioplot package, and we will generate the violin plot. So, this is the short form for violin plot. Okay. This actually sometimes could be useful instead of box plot, and I will explain when we go into doing this visualization with vioplot, and then we will talk about visualization with the ggplot2. So, I will introduce the ggplot2 package first, and I will show you some of the functions. I will give you some idea, right, how this package works, and then again we will take a hands on where we will actually discuss the we will take a data set and we will actually generate these different plots with ggplot2. Okay. So, ggplot2 is really widely used in our community, and you will see it generates very nice plots. There is another package that we will also use which is related, is gscatter, but not in this class, in the next class. Okay. So, let us first look into the vioplot, and then we will discuss the ggplot2, because that is a completely different kind of direction. Okay. So, let us now first move to R, right, where we will do the vioplot and use vioplot, and then we will go to ggplot. So, here is the data set that we have been using, and we used for box plot in the last class. Okay. This is the data set, the complete data set, and which we split based on the value of the one parameter data box. Okay. So, what we will do and what we did also is we generated these box plots in the last class, which I have saved now. Okay. So, you can see, if probably you remember, right, we had these two classes that we generated based on no data box and yes data box, and we also used the strip chart function to actually add these data points, the raw data points, right. So, this is okay, right, we can see the data points, but what you will probably realize, when the density of data points are very high, it's difficult to distinguish or difficult to understand, right, how many points are actually there. Okay. So, to avoid this, we can use the vioplot, which actually will give us this idea about how many data points are there based on the thickness. Okay. So, we'll generate this vioplot first, and I'll explain how we actually can understand how many data points are there. Okay. So, this is the data. We have generated this no data box data as well as the yes data box data, right. So, we have that stored already. So, sorry, no data box, okay, and we also have the yes data box data. So, we will use the same data for the vioplot, and as I said, we need to use this function library vioplot. Okay. So, the other one that we will also use is we want to check this vioplot package in R, right. So, this is the violin plot, right, and here is the manual, okay, which will tell us, right, how to, what are the commands, basic commands that you, for all functions we have very similar commands, etc., right. You can also again check the help page, etc. So, this is the function vioplot, right, and you can see it generates violin plots. Why they are called violin plots? You will see the shape looks like violins, okay, and this is how it should be used, right. Vioplot, you have the x, then you have the different ways you can actually say the x labels, etc. So, again there would be some examples likely to be there at the end. Yeah, so you can see this violin plot, and it's also comparing this box versus violin plot. Okay, so we'll not go through all this, but here are some examples which will also tell you how to actually use the vioplot data. Okay, so you can use something like this, and it also has this option of what are the names of these values, what are the main labels, x label, y label that we have seen. You can also add legends, right. So, this is something that's also possible in R. So, you can add legend, you can mention where you want to add the legend, etc. So, maybe we will try this in vioplot here. Okay. So, let us try the first function, which is the simplest one, vioplot no data box. Okay. Okay, so this is the basic one we have created. Okay, and as you can see, what it tells us, it looks like violins, right, if you can imagine, and then what you see is the thickness, right. This thickness actually is telling us how many data points are there for this value. Okay, so this kind of gives us an idea how many data points are there, okay, which was not possible to guess from box plot, right, because sometimes the density of points is too high. So, in that case, violin plot actually can gives us the idea of the data points that are present, where most of the data points are present, right. This is kind of like giving us an idea about the distribution of data points, okay, along with the median, etc., all these things. Okay, so we can now go and make this a bit nicer, like other plots. We can use colors, right, similar way. Let's try the similar way as we used before, right. So, we will define two colors, one is red and another would be blue. Okay. So, the color has changed, right. So, we are looking into two data. We can also say names. So, this is possible. Okay, so we have changed it, right. Okay, so size has changed. We can have an y label, which is the expression noise in YPD. Okay, so the y label is actually overlapping, so let's not use that for now. and then we can also have a main level, right. So, those things will work, and maybe we can add a legend, right, as we said, right, as the code suggests. Sorry, they are not here, as it suggests, right. So, we can also add a legend, right, and we can say, right, this is the command for adding legend. You say fill top left, or maybe, yeah, so top left here. So, if you go to R, so this is the top left part where we want this, okay, and we can say fill color, right. So, we have these boxes that will be filled with color, that these will correspond to the samples, and then legend will say what these colors refer to, okay. So, we can also try this here, okay. Okay, top left, then we have, sorry, yeah, so this should be within the quotes, then so fill is the command. We will have to use the same color that we have used for the box for the violin plot, right. And then we have to mention the legend, right. So, legend is C. So, this is let us say no Tata box, and yes, Tata box, or just say Tata box, right. Okay. So, we have added the legend. Now, you can see on the top left, okay. This is something that we can also do, okay. So, not just for violin plot, but for any type of plot, okay. So, as you can see that we are now getting into more and more complexities, and we can do all of this through R, okay. So, this is something we have done. So, we can save this, right, dev.copy to PDF file violin plot noise and distributed by databox.pdf, and we use this command to maintain resolution, okay. Okay, so we can use any of these, right, box plot or violin plot to actually compare multiple samples. Okay, so with that, now we can move into the ggplot part, okay, and we can see, right, the ggplot2 package, okay. So, here is the ggplot2 package, and this contains a lot of these functions, and there are a lot of things you can do, okay. As you will see, it is not a very short package. So, you will have to take time to actually go through this. There are a lot of functions, lot of things you can do here, okay. So, this is a very extensive package, and again this is that allows us to create beautiful visualizations. Okay, so let us discuss little bit of ggplot2, how it works and how we actually plot the data. So, in ggplot2, when you plot, we have to give the data set, and then we have to give the coordinate system that we are going to use, plus the visual representation, okay. So, you will see these terms in ggplot that are very common. So, one is AES, okay. So, this is common aesthetic values that will have to provide, or that will have to specify in the ggplot2. And then we also see the geoms, okay. These geoms, this will determine how we want to represent the data points, right. This might include the AES as well, okay. And then of course, you can determine you can also specify the scales. So, here are some just very briefly, just to mention how this will work, right. You might say will create the ggplot first, right. So, this ggplot, and then data, and then aesthetics, okay. And we store this in this parameter A, okay. This variable A. Now, on top of that, now we can use the geoms, okay. What are these geoms? We can say A plus geom level, we can say A plus geom point, we can say A plus geom box plot, we can say A plus geom upline, right. So, we can create a line. This is something that is possible, okay. And then we also have a similar package which is called the scatter plot, which is used for scatter plot. It's called the ggScatter package, okay, and it can create very nice scatter plots with trend line and confidence intervals. Okay, so this is something that's also very useful, because sometimes when we feed trend lines, we want to know the confidence interval. So confidence interval means, right, the most of the time, for 95% of the time, the line will fall within this range. Okay, so that is something we also desire often when we are plotting trend lines. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll first look into some of these ggplot2 functions, and then we'll do the hands-on with a real data set, and we'll discuss, we'll see how we can generate this ggplot2, right, plots. And I'll also explain, right, how we actually get this upline function with a simple plot, and then probably understand the idea of adding a line to a plot, which we have not explored so far in our plotting, but I will demonstrate how we can actually add this upline function or AB line function. Okay. Okay, so let's now again move to R, and we'll first look into this ggplot2, right. This is the package where you have these functions, right, and you see this, there are a lot of these geomes functions, right. So you have this geome box plot, some of them I have mentioned. You have geome density, you have density 2D, for example, you also have geome jitter, right, QQ line, geome quantile, etc., etc. Okay, you also have geome violin. Okay, so we have seen some of these in normal R functions, right. We have not seen how they will behave in geome when you use the ggplot. Okay, but I'll encourage you to explore this, right, yourself. So of course we cannot explore all these functions in this class. We'll explore only some of this, right, maybe one or two. But I'll encourage you to explore this, right, and test on your data set or the data set that we'll share. So try these out, different geome functions on them. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just go into this now, this ggplot. Okay, okay. So what you see here, this is the create a new ggplot. This is the function. So it describes, right, what it will do, right. It initializes ggplot. So and this is how it should be used, right. You have the data, then you have mapping, etc., and then you have also the explanations of all this. Okay, we do not use the environment anymore. So you can see this is deprecated. So we do not use this anymore. So this is how it should look like, right. ggplot data equals to df, mapping is aesthetics, right, AES, xy and other aesthetics that you want to do, and here's a very nice explanation of all this. Okay, then of course you also have an example, right, how to use this ggplot2 or ggplot function, right. So this is something we'll better understand by doing. Okay, maybe not by just looking at this. The other thing I wanted to also show, right, how one of these geome functions, so that's the ggplot function that will initiate the ggplot, but we also have the geome functions in here, and let's say we want to see the geome box plot. Okay. Okay, so it's a box and whisker plot or box plot, right, and so it shows that distribution of continuous variable, right. So we have this what you have seen in box plot, right, and here how we should use this, right, geome box plot. These are the parameters that are there. Again, as you can see in incredible details, you can actually change each of these parameters, how the shape would look like, color, etc., all these things. Okay, this is something that's possible in R, and here you can test which parameter does what, right. So this is something that you can test by doing. Okay, and here is an explanation of what each of these parameters do, right, and what you can do, and there might be like there would be an example somewhere, right, here, right. So you see this. Okay, so here is the ggplot, right, based on a data set, right. That's actually our data set that is already stored in here, and this one. So we first create the ggplot, right, with the data and aesthetics, and then we have to say we add these geome functions. Okay, so you can say geome box plot, right. So, we create box plot, or you can say geom box plot notch equals to true, right. So, these are the parameters of geom box plot that can be changed. Okay. And here are other parameters, for example, outline color equals to red, etc. Okay. And then you can also add on top of box plot the geom jitter, right. So, this is also possible. Okay. So, one thing I should tell you, right, we have talked about lot of details, right, when you are creating these plots or visualizations, but there are even more parameters that you can tune. Okay. The spacing of the lines and the spacing of these axes, etc. we can also change all of those, right, how this will be represented. A lot of things can be changed. If we want to put 3-4 plots together, that we can also do that, right. So, maybe imagine we want to show these 4 panels, right, for 4 different data sets, right, similar panels, and we can create that in R as well. Okay. So, we can put them together. So, there is a lot more optimization that you can do, right, a lot more customization that you can do with R programming. Okay. So, here are some of the examples. So, you can, I will encourage you to try out, right. This is something that will give you some idea of how you can customize many of these parameters. Okay. So, I think that is probably enough for theoretical discussion. Let us now move to R, and we will see the ggplot. Okay. So, this is a very simple ggplot that we want to do. Okay. And we will see how this actually works. Okay. And we will see. Okay. All right. So, let us first try this with the new data set. So, this I will introduce a new data set to you. Okay. And I will change directory. So, let us see where we are. Okay. So, we are in class 9. So, let us change to the other directory where this data is. Okay. Okay. And I will load the data now. So, let us clear the environment. I will removing the earlier data that was stored, and we can check what are the parameters that are present in the environment, right. You can see these are there in the environment with the ls function. So, I have removed the data, and so we can now load the new data here. Okay. And this is an experiment where we have some measurements, right, for some strains in hydrogen peroxide, how they are growing in hydrogen peroxide. Okay. So, that is the experiment, and let us see the data. Okay. And here again we have some round information, right. This is kind of like a time scale, and you have these different lines for which we have some data points. Okay. So, what we want to do is we want to plot this round versus line, right, plot, okay, using ggplot. Okay. So, what you will also notice is this is kind of, these values are actually slightly shifted, right. So, that we can put them in one plot, one after another. Okay. So, this is what we are going to do, and what we want is this line versus round. So, round would be the x axis, y axis would be the values for these lines at different rounds. Okay. This is what we want. Okay. So, for doing that we will use ggplot2. So, for that we will have to load this ggplot library. Let us see if it is installed or not. Okay, it is there. I will also load 2 other libraries in R, 2 other R packages, which we will talk about in future classes. One package is called tidyr, the other is called dplyr. Okay. So, this is these are part of tidyvars, right. So, this is another R package, R library, which we will talk about in subsequent classes. Okay. So, why do you need this package? Because these packages help in data organization. Okay. So, you will see we use some of these functions that will be required, so that we can reorganize the data before we can plot the data, right. We need to do the data in a specific format before we can plot it using ggplot2. So, these packages tidyr and dplyr, they actually help in those reorganizations. We will talk about these packages individually in subsequent classes, and we will see what are the functions that these packages give us, right. Okay, so I'll load this data, right. So this data is loaded now. Okay, so in these variables. Okay, so maybe I'll change just a name because we have the file. So this will be easier for us to plot. Okay, so this is fine. The data, I just changed the name, nothing else, and we'll need these libraries now. Okay, let's see if they are installed. Yes, they are installed, and when you are loading this package, it's saying it's from matrix stats, like other packages that are present in the environment. Some of these functions have been masked. Okay, so these functions cannot be availed, right. This count function, filter function, intersect, etc. These functions are now masked. Okay, so this information is given because why these are masked, because there is a conflict, right. So this dplyr has also a function with the same name, count, and similarly it also has a function with filter, intersect, etc. right. So if you call these functions now, so R will be confused, right. Which function should I use, whether it should be dplyr or the matrix stats package or stats package, right. Now if you want to specify that you want to use that function from matrix stats, this is how we can do. Okay, although we have not used this so far, right, we just use this function, but if you have a conflict and you want to ensure that you are calling the right function from the right package, this is how you can use. Okay, so you can name the package double colon and then write the function. Okay, so then here it will tell you, okay, what you need this function, what are the parameters that you have to specify, etc. Okay, so this is how we can also access functions from specific packages. Okay, all right. So now let's go to R, right. So we have read the data. So what we will do is we will reorganize this data. Okay, so this is the function for reorganization, and these functions come from this tidyr and dplyr. Okay, so what this function does, it actually takes this data and it reorganizes them. Okay, and it reorganizes them and assigns them to this data frame. Okay, so let's see what this data actually does. Okay, so what we had, remember, right, was something like this. We had the round and A1, A2, A3 and etc. What we have now is something like this. You see this the organization has changed, right. So you have this round information, then you have A1, you have the value, right. The whole structure has changed. Okay, and this is something that's required because ggplot2 will take data in a specific format, right, and it will create these plots. Okay, so these functions are required for reorganization, which we will discuss in much more detail in the next class. Once we have discussed this function, now we have reorganized the data, so we now have to use the ggplot function. Okay, so let's try this first. We'll first use the very simple one, right. So here nothing has happened, it's just we are saying x equals to round and y equals to value, right. So these are the parameters, right. So these are the labels for that we are using, right. So we have this round and the value that we have in the column, right. So we have these two columns in the reorganized data and we are plotting this data. Okay. Now what will happen, so what we can do is we can say that A equals to this. Okay, and what we can do is we can now add this geom objects. Okay, and we first use the geom point object because it will show the data points. Okay, and inside the point it will tell us, right, what should be the color and what should be the size of these points. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, and here are the colors, and you see these variables, different variables, right, different strains that we had, they show different colors, right. These colors are there in the given in for the variables. Okay, so this is a system generated, but if you want specific colors, you can mention this, which we will mention a bit later. Okay, so you can, so this is done. Now we can also say the geom line, right. So connect these points with a line. Okay, so you can see the colors are given now and they are connected, the points are drawn as well as they are connected by line. Okay, all right. So this is done, then we can probably give our own colors, right, that we have been using. Okay. So, this is something we can do. So, as you can see, we are making this plot more and more complex. Okay. And also you go along, right, you see now we have given our specific colors, okay, that we have mentioned by this command scale color manual, right. So, we have 6 types, 6 columns, 6 data, right, 6 trains. So, we have used 6 different colors. The other things what we are using here, plus with the plus signs, for example, we are using theme minimal. Okay. So, it's something that we can use to describe the background, right. We keep it like a specific background. We will come to this bit later when we go into GG scatter, etc. You will see this, we can actually also specify font size, etc. all this font size which we are not kind of dealing with right now. So, in GG scatter we will do that. Then it is saying scale y continuous limits this, and what should be the breaks, right, where the levels should be. Okay. Right now they are kind of given by the by default, right, by the ggplot, but we want scales at specific points. Okay. This is something what we want to do. And then we also say scale x continuous, what should be the limit and breaks at, so 1, right. So, start with 0 and give 0, 1, 2, 3, right. So, currently the levels are 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5. Okay. We want the levels at 1, 0, 1, because this is where the data points are, right. So, that is where we want to mention these levels. Okay. So, we can run the whole thing now and see. Okay. And you can see with theme minimal the background is gone. So, it is kind of clear, right, we can see the plot much better, and the labels, the axis like range has changed, right, where we have the numbers like 0, 1, and similarly for y axis the range has changed, right, where those numbers are given. Okay. So, we can customize all of these aspects. We can also change the size of these labels, etc., which we can define as our own theme. Okay. So, this is something we will be talking about in the next class when we talk about GG scatter package. So, we will end this with just saving this in dev.copy to PDF, right. This is the command, standard command we are familiar with now. Okay. So, we have talked about so going back now, we have talked about the ggplot2 package, right, and we have used this ggplot2 package to generate some plots, and we have customized with different options. And I will encourage you to do this yourself, try this out yourself, so that you gain more hands-on experience. Here are some references to the packages that you can use, and I have also put reference to GG scatter, which we will introduce in the next class and will utilize for some hands-on. Thank you.